It's MusicalTalk, the UK's independent musical theatre podcast. Hello and welcome to another edition of MusicalTalk. I'm Thos and I love a quiz. And indeed, I've been responsible for many questions in the past, most particularly, why on earth is this man still allowed to broadcast on MusicalTalk? Well, be that as it may, if you're here for a quiz, you're in luck, because it's a brand new year, and that means it must be time for our annual Merry Quizmas and a Happy New Earful. A long-standing tradition here on MusicalTalk, where I ask a number of musical theatre-related questions, and then in between, whilst you're thinking of the answers, we play some of the songs that you could have heard in episodes of MusicalTalk over this year, or in the recent past. And the opening music that you heard today was an instrumental piece of music from The Telltale Heart, a song by Tom Arnold from his wonderful show The House of Edgar, which we've discussed on several occasions here on MusicalTalk. Well, what have we got for you today? It's a quiz with 15 songs and therefore 15 questions. And because we lost one of the great writers of musical theatre in 2021, all the questions today are going to be about the life and works of Stephen Sondheim. It seemed entirely appropriate that we should mark his passing and our run of tribute shows with this quiz about the great man. And I'm going to start with a quotation from his version of The Frogs from 1974, when he calls on the gods of the theatre to bless this yearly festival and smile on us. And I think that seems entirely appropriate for this annual quiz. So, let's start today with our very first question in this Sondheim quiz for 2022. Who hated the line, "They're always popping their cork"? And whilst you're thinking about that, let's listen to a song appropriately called The Opening Number from I Wish My Life Were Like a Musical by the incredibly talented Alexander Bermange.
You're poised in your seat?
The build-up's begun.
5 minutes ago, a voice was warning the show would be starting in 1.
Then after about a Malteser or 3, at last the house lights go out, oh so gradually.
A voice goes,
Ladies and gents, blah 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 blah.
There's yet more silent suspense, and then the opening bar.
The overture brings tingles to your skin.
The day's preoccupations are gone.
You're gagging for the action to begin.
Then at last you sense a song coming on.
Oh, what a beautiful tradition. It's how the company of a musical says hello. It will commonly have too much exposition. It's another opening of another show. And you'll love the opening number, the song that can't come too fast. That first song line, the long-awaited sign, the damn thing started at last. Then comes a sneaky suspicion, more painful with each word you hear. The show's kicked off with a dart, and it's all downhill from here.
You won't want to miss the dialogue between the verses.
Admire how the length of the underscoring fits perfectly with
You'll
what's
love
being
the opening number, though they'll have skimped on the set. And And soon you found the guy who's doing the sound has not quite mastered it yet. And the lyrics flaws also mean no way to understand the cast, while those playing Yanks will all sound like they're natives of Belfast.
And meanwhile half the audience finish off the emails they've begun.
The others start unwrapping all their boiled sweeties one by one.
And looking towards the bit of stage some pillar hasn't blocked from view.
Your seat's ideal to watch some giant's head that's right in front of you.
Then latecomers come clamouring through, not caring if they take an age.
At least they're a distraction from the total bilge that's on the stage. You'll love the opening number when sets aren't wobbling like hell, or they're designed by someone clearly blind.
There could be miming as well.
You wish you'd have checked Wikipedia for synopsis before you had gone, for then you might have a clue what the hell is going on. What's best in the opening number will be the big finish, no doubt. No matter if they deserve it, they'll pause for a few moments applause. So while you're giving them yours, get out.
But don't do that now.
And there we are, the opening number from I Wish My Life Were Like a Musical. And the question was, who hated the line, "They're always popping their cork"? Well, the answer is Charlie Kringus, who just happened to be the fictional writer of them in Merrily We Roll Along, which is a show with a lot of cut songs. Now, when it comes to Sondheim's cut songs, some are very easy to identify where they came from. There's a song called I Love Fosca, which was cut, obviously, from Passion. And there was a song called Bring On the Girls, which is obviously from Follies. However, and this is our next question, what musical by Sondheim might have included the songs called The Natives Are Restless and The Lame, the Halt and the Blind? And whilst you ponder that conundrum, let's have another song, which is an opening number, this time the opening number from the musical drama podcast The Ballad of Anne and Mary, by Lawrence Owen and Lindsay Sharman.
Travellers and friends gather round. A ballad have I to chill and astound, of ships run aground, of good sailors drowned at the hands of Anne and Mary. Man that is born of a woman have only the the shortest of time for to be. And nowhere are folks more aware of that fate than the terrible, ravenous sea, where the waves they do tower, the winds they do blow, and krakens and monsters drag men down below. But some men are so wicked, the devil himself has cast them back up from his hell. Yes, some men and some women as well.
They say that my hair became red from the blood of the innocent sailors I've slain. They say we were crueler than Avery himself and more vicious than Blackbeard or Vane. They say it's bad luck to have women on board, and that 2 on 1 ship is a crime against God, and that crime will bring terrible luck to mankind. They say we're a plague and a curse. Yes, they say lots of things about us.
What kind of woman becomes a pirate? How did these angels come to fall? Men will be devils if they desire, but how can a woman be a pirate at all?
Flame-haired Anne Bonny and Dove Mary Reed,
Her raven locks stiff with the brine, with breasts bursting free of their binding men's shirts.
What? No, they weren't.
and bountiful booty behind.
Their tight breeches are hugging voluptuous thighs,
Stop right there.
with ruby red lips and hellfire in their eyes.
And they slip a forked tongue in your ear. Do you try to resist their unholy demands? Will you join them or die by their hand?
That's not true. Why aren't you listening to a word we're saying?
Flash the 2 beauties reveal their true form as a hydra beast vile to behold.
Stop with this nonsense.
Like a 2-headed reaper, they fight back to back, hacking bodies and harvesting souls.
You're oversimplifying.
Massacre all but who bow to their will. They feed off the lives of the sailors that they kill.
And the last thing you'll see as their cutlasses spill your insides on the bloody deck are 2 she-devils locked in the kiss.
There we are, the opening number from the Ballad of Anne and Mary. And that podcast is still available to listen to if you'd like to do so, and I'd strongly recommend it. But the question was, what musical by Sondheim might have contained the songs The Natives Are Restless and The Lame, the Halt and the Blind, if only they hadn't been cut? And the answer is, Anyone Can Whistle. Interestingly, or at least interestingly to me, that's a musical where some of the songs that were originally cut in the 1960s have found their way back into the current performing versions. It seems hard to believe, but the songs There Won't Be Trumpets and There's Always a Woman were originally cut, but they have now, thankfully, both been reinstated. Well, let's continue with cut songs. Which musical might have featured 3 songs called Darling, Honey, and Thanks for Coming? And that, I think, is a difficult question, but it's not impossible, which by the magic of corny segues is the name of the next song from the wonderful musical Gideon and the Blunder Snorp by another old friend of this programme, Michael Gordon Shapiro.
Not impossible. Not impossible. I heard it distinctly, that's what he said, and now I can't get the words out of my head. Not impossible. That means possible. That's better than who knows or no one can say. That means there's a way. So I've just gotta figure out what I can do, so that I can be part of the Cavaliers too. Can you imagine it? Being an assistant to an assistant to an assistant to a real Cavalier, helping the helpers of the helpers when danger is near, acting with bravery, being the first into danger and the last to retreat, aiding the fight against murderous hordes, maybe assisting with carrying swords, riding the kingdom and safeguarding farmers and lords. Not impossible, tricky but not impossible. They must need an extra helper or 3. Why can't one be me? I've just gotta come up with a thing I can do, so that I can be part of the Cavaliers too. Oh, I guess this is where we turn around.
You know, Aspiration, I bet we can jump that fence. Oh, don't be like that. It's not that tall.
Let's do it. Yeah!
Sometimes when I ride, I start to lose track of the rest of the world, and it feels like the wind is challenging me to a race. And there's just the rhythm and the bounce of the road as we pick up the pace. First I bring her to a trot, and then a trot becomes a canter, and a canter is a gallop, and we're gone. And the world turns into colors like a spell from an enchanter, and it feels like I'm floating incredibly high, like I'm jumping right over the sky. Yeah! Not impossible. What I want's not impossible. I may be a peasant stuck with a chore. I may be a commoner sweeping the floor, but I can be more. I have just gotta figure out what I can do, so that I can be part of the Cavaliers too.
There we are. Not Impossible from Gideon and the Blundersnorp by Michael Gordon Shapiro. And the question was, what musical might have featured 3 songs called Darling, Honey and Thanks for Coming? And the answer is the musical that isn't known as Along Roll We Merrily, although it probably ought to be, bearing in mind so much of it goes backwards. And one more cut song question. Which musical might have featured a song called A Little House for Mama and Never Say Die? And to give you time to work through your memory banks to come up with the answer, let's listen to a song from another musical drama podcast by Lawrence Owen and Lindsay Sharman called Mockery Manor. This is a wonderful retro song called Are You a Memory? Played for you today by the Alfred Mockery Orchestra and featuring Max Vibrato. And here they are.
I have a memory of a sweet rendezvous, and in that memory I'm dreaming and loving you. Are you a memory, or are you a dream? And though that memory may be imprecise, dreaming of you is to dream of a paradise. Are you a memory, or are my dreams as clear as the moon in the sky. But my memory seems to be hazy and grey, like the clouds passing by. And though that memory may not be true, I'll stay in dreamland and dream that I'm loving you. Are you a memory, or are you a dream?
There we are, the song Are You a Memory from Mockery Manor. And once again, if you want to listen to that musical drama podcast, you still can. But the question was, what Sondheim musical might have featured the songs Never Say Die and A Little House for Mama? Well, it sounds like they should probably have come from Gypsy, but actually those two songs were cut from the musical, which is sometimes known as Wise Guys and sometimes known as Road Show. Right, moving on to shows that were not actually produced. In 1993, James Lapine and Stephen Sondheim began work on a one-act musical called Muscles. And Sondheim even wrote two songs for it called Poses and No Problem. But then the show was abandoned. However, later on, Lapine developed the show with lyrics by Ellen Fitzhugh and music by which composer, who is often considered to be a disciple of Sondheim. And to give you a few minutes, here's a song called Get Yourself Underground from the musical Paradise Lodge.
Here comes a doodlebug overhead. Oh, you better get out of bed and do like Mr. Beveridge said. Get yourself underground. Here comes a doodlebug, can't you hear? It was far, but now it's near. So make just like those rabbits, dear. Get yourself underground. Get yourself underground. When the buzz bombs buzz around, get yourself underground. When you hear the air raid warning, doodlebug stutters, then it stops. Oh, you know that it's about to drop. So double time, quick chop, chop chop. Get yourself underground.
The song Get Yourself Underground from Paradise Lodge. And the question was, which composer eventually worked with James Lapine and Ellen Fitzhugh to write the score for a show called Muscles, which Stephen Sondheim had previously worked on? And the answer is William Finn. And if you're wondering why you've never heard of the show Muscles, I can tell you it got as far as a workshop, but I understand it's not been produced. Well, we should never forget that Stephen Sondheim was a masterful lyricist and not just a composer, and of course he worked with Leonard Bernstein on Candide and West Side Story. But what unproduced third musical with Bernstein that Sondheim worked on might have given us a chance to hear these songs? I've Got to Get There in 7 Days Flat, The Suspicion Song, The Paranoia Song, and Get Your Ass in There. And whilst you're thinking about that, let's listen to a live recording of the song Magic's Making Me, once again from Alexander Bermange's excellent I Wish My Life Were Like a Musical.
I wish that my life were like a musical that's filled with the thrills there should have been. So why do I still put myself through it all? What stops me from just changing scene? It's the faith of a family, each sacrifice they've made.
The belief of the teachers I want to see repaid.
It's the surge of elation each time I get that call.
The rousing power of creation that makes it worth it all.
The fooling and the friendship, the feel of It's more than making magic, more like magic's making me.
It's the rush of excitement each time that moment nears.
The escape to a dream world that frees all doubts and fears.
It's the pride of perfecting each detail I prepare.
Those treasured steps across stages that feel like I'm on air. The source of satisfaction each cheer I hear can be. It's more than making magic, more like magic's making me. It's the force of the memory that lingers when that's through, and the quest to recapture that distant bliss anew. It's the sudden surprises tomorrow might reveal. The childhood dreams deep inside me I need to still make real. It's all I love and live for. It's who I have to be. It's more than making magic, more like magic's making me.
Magic's making,
Magic's making me.
Magic's making,
Magic's making me.
magic's making,
Magic's making.
magic's making.
Magic's making me.
There we are. Magic's Making Me, in a live recording from I Wish My Life Were Like a Musical by the ever-talented Alexander Bermange. And the question was, what was the third Bernstein-Sondheim musical, featuring songs including Get Your Arse in There and I Have Got to Get There in 7 Days Flat? And the answer is, and this is fairly obscure I think, A Prey by Blecht from 1968. Sometimes this musical is known as The Exception and The Rule, and it's actually based on a play by Bertolt Brecht, not Blecht. But obviously the consonants were changed for comic effect. And if you know anything about popular culture in the 1960s, Mad magazine, which was at its zenith, was using Blecht quite a lot to represent dissatisfaction with the quality of an object. And we should never forget that in that mid-1960s period, Mad magazine launched its own musical show, which featured a song with lyrics by Stephen Sondheim, The Boy From. Now, if A Prey by Blecht from 1968 had come to pass, it would have been directed by Jerome Robbins. And he, of course, provided the choreography for the 1961 film version of West Side Story. And as you probably know, there's a new version, a remake of West Side Story, which was released a mere 60 years later. But who is the one person to appear in both versions of that film? Now, while you're thinking about that, let's have a song that's even older than 60 years, by about 200 or 300 years. It's a song called The Grasshopper and the Fly, and it comes complete with a bit of comic introduction by an old friend of this programme, David William Hughes, who specialises in bringing life back to songs from as early as the Tudor period and all the way through to the next 200 or 300 years. So please enjoy this scurrilous piece of 18th century songwriting.
So ladies and gentlemen, this show is called Wit and Mirth, which might seem like I'm massively overpromising for a one-man cabaret based on 300-year-old material, but it is in fact the title of this book, which I have borrowed, not stolen, from the Harvard Library. This book by a man called Thomas Durfee, or later in life, Thomas Durfee. So he actually changed his name and put an apostrophe after the first letter to make it sound more French and more sophisticated. How about that, ladies and gentlemen? A grasshopper and a fly in summer hot and dry, in eager argument were met to talk about priority. Says the fly to the grasshopper, from mighty race I spring. Bright Phoebus was my dad, 'tis true, and I eat and drink with a king. Says the grasshopper to the fly, shucks, rogues are still preferred. Your father may be of a high degree, but your mother was just a turd. That's Henry Purcell and Thomas in 1698.
There we are, David William Hughes singing The Grasshopper and the Fly, one of the many songs collected in the book Wit and Mirth. And the question was, who is the one person to appear in both the 1961 and the 2021 film versions of West Side Story? And the answer, and you probably knew this, Rita Moreno. She was Anita, Bernardo's girlfriend in the original, and she now plays Valentina in the new version. And this is impressive, she's just turned 90 years old. She's also executive producer of the film. Well, how about this question for another filmed work by Stephen Sondheim? Which Sondheim production, first premiered on the 16th of November 1966, filmed entirely on location, but then had to wait 39 years to get its world premiere on stage, and that was in London? And to give you thinking time, let's listen to another wonderful song from Gideon and the Blundersnorp by Michael Gordon Shapiro, and the song is called The Age of Adventure.
You're lost in the woods, the light fading fast, a sword at your side. You're half up a wall when an archer appears, there's nowhere to hide. You're racing through an alley, you're dining with the queen, you're divvying the treasure, you're jumping a ravine, you're pondering a mythical tome. One thing's for certain, you're miles from home. This is the time when dark forces gather and few dare to tread. The age of adventure. There's terrible danger and even worse odds, so full speed ahead.
So much adventure.
There's troubadours and merchants,
Alliances and clans, and iron-hearted heroes with ill-considered plans.
one thing adventurers know, there's peril ahead and there's miles to go. Some know the journey awaits, but don't answer the call. They hear the desires of their hearts and think life isn't like that at all. So they turn to more practical lives where there's no way to fail. And they shun the desires of their hearts and they never set sail. But not in this tale.
You're rescuing a relic.
You're aiming a ballista.
You're spying for a duchess. You're charging on a stallion. You're plotting a rebellion. You're leading a battalion. You're everyone who's ever set forth.
If you believe that there's something within you that yearns to be free,
join the adventure.
That hungers for challenge and burns for the journey, then just follow me. We're riding on the daybreak, we're sailing with the tide. The bards will sing forever, of dangers be defied. I can't say how long that we'll be away, for once you've arrived here, you might want to stay.
You're running an embargo. You're navigating canyons. You're disregarding orders. You're gathering companions. You're sailing through the tempest. You're reveling in wonder. You're running for your life as the cannons start to thunder. Your quest is underway. Your legend starts today. Get ready for the age of adventure.
There, Michael Gordon Shapiro's song The Age of Adventure from his musical Gideon and the Blundersnorp. And that question beforehand was to ask, What production first premiered on the 16th of November 1966, filmed entirely on location, but then had to wait 39 years before it was premiered on stage, and in London at that? And the answer is Evening Primrose, which, as you probably know, is an hour-long TV musical with 4 songs written by Stephen Sondheim and starring Anthony Perkins and Charmian Carr. And it was filmed overnight in Stern Brothers department store in Manhattan, and so therefore was recorded completely on location. What's interesting to me is that actually it was originally produced in colour, but unfortunately only a black and white recording exists. But it was possible to see it in colour when it was done on stage at the Lillian Baylis Theatre in London in October 2005, which counted as its first professional theatrical production, its premiere on stage. Well, let's have a Sondheim lyric as the basis of the next question. In the musical Do I Hear a Waltz, Sondheim worked with Richard Rodgers. Not very happily by all accounts, but in my mind, very fruitfully. I love the score of Do I Hear a Waltz. There's a song in it called What Do We Do? We Fly, which is about the unhappiness of travelling by aeroplane, and it has one verse dedicated to aeroplane food. And in this song, Stephen Sondheim asserts in his lyric that one of the many problems of flying by an aeroplane is the quality of the food that you get on aeroplane meals. He suggests that the things which are unidentifiable when they're served up before you can be easily categorised. If it's shiny, it's probably tomatoes. If it's in a group, it's salad. If it's curly, it's potatoes. And if it moves, it's going to be soup. But what does he advise us to do if the food is grey? And to perhaps take your mind off that, let's listen to a beautiful rendition of the Stephen Foster song Beautiful Dreamer, performed by MusicalTalk's own David Herzog.
Beautiful dreamer, waken to me. Starlight and dewdrops are waiting for thee. Sounds of the rude world heard in the day, lulled by the moonlight, have all passed away. Beautiful dreamer, queen of my song, list while I woo thee with soft melody. Gone are the cares of life's busy throng. Beautiful dreamer, awaken to me. Beautiful dreamer, awaken to me.
David Herzog there singing Beautiful Dreamer, with Jonathan Cohen accompanying him on the piano. And the question was, in the song What Do We Do? We Fly, by Stephen Sondheim and Richard Rodgers, what does Sondheim say that we should do with food that is grey? Well, the answer is, he says, anything that is grey, don't eat. Next question. In 1956, Stephen Sondheim teamed up with Elaine Carrington, who was most well known for writing radio soap operas, and together they set about writing an unproduced television musical about a summer stock drama coach. The song They Ask Me Why I Believe in You is the only thing that publicly survives from this show, and that song has been recorded on a number of occasions. But what was the name of the show itself? And here's a clue. It's the name of a song later written by Frank Lesser for his wonderful musical How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. And to give you time, as always, to think about that, let's hear another song. At the beginning of this episode, you heard the instrumental version of The Telltale Heart, one of the songs from The House of Edgar by Tom Arnold. It's one of my favourite songs from the last few years at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe, so let's listen to it in its entirety with lyrics.
I am dreadfully nervous, but I am not mad. Hearken and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story.
When I first had the faintest of foulest of thoughts, unfeasible to say, but once lodged in the back of my restless brain, it would haunt me night and day. The old man never harmed no man, but it was by his hand that I thrived. Yet I took delight in the right to ensure that by night he would no longer survive.
He had never wronged me, he had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. He had a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold.
Now this is the point, you fancy me mad. You will not judge if you saw how I planned. Madmen know nothing, they know not a jot. Nervous I may be, but a madman I'm not. Yes, manic I may be, but a madman I'm not. So for 7 nights by lantern light I hid outside his door, and the time was spent to sharpen senses, but fearless, nervous of the nearness of the task that I perform. Lantern aloft, I slowly pushed the lonely door aside. With disbelief I saw him wake from his sleep, his eyelids peeled back wide. Now this is the point, you fancy me mad. You would not judge if you saw how I planned. Madmen know nothing, they know not a jot. Nervous I may be, but a madman I'm not. Yes, manic I may be, but a madman I'm not. Subduing my pride, I knelt down by the side and gazed upon the source of my rage, my pain, of my fear and disdain, of an evil cold and coarse. From his mouth came too late to unseal his fate a single final cry, as with his last living look he fixed me with that pale blue vulture's eye. His pulse rang like a drum beat of thudding bass and marching snare, and it faded into the distance as I entered the vulture's glare. The night waned and I worked hastily but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse, I cut off the head and the arms and the legs. I then tore up 3 planks from the flooring and deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the boards so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye,
not even his, could have detected anything wrong. As the bell sounded the hour, I heard a knocking at the door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I to fear? There entered 3 men, officers of the police, who said they had heard a shriek. I told them the old man was away in the country, and bade they search his house well.
Now this is the point, you fancy me mad. You would not judge if you saw how I... Like a pocket-watching potter, the softest ticking caught my ear, and it rose like a double-time bass drum beat, marching ever near. And like a disease of pained unease took root deep in my gut. It seeped and spread and oozed and wept like a foul and festering cut. As it rose running red like clotting blood blubbing back at the back of my throat, it mixed with the deafening dead man's pulse to produce a pounding note. The chaotic chord crescendo, it was the devil's art. I fell to my knees before the police, overwhelmed by his telltale heart.
There we are, the wonderful Telltale Heart song from The House of Edgar by Tom Arnold. And the question was, what was the name of the unproduced 1956 TV musical featuring the song They Ask Me Why I Believe in You? And it was called I Believe in You, which, as I say, was later a song from How to Succeed in Business. Let's move forward very nearly 20 years from 1956 to 1974, which incidentally is the year of the original production of The Frogs, the Sondheim musical set in the Yale swimming pool, or at least upon its original production. But this question relates not at all to The Frogs, but to something entirely different. What French film of that year, starring Charles Boyer and Jean-Paul Belmondo, and also a very young Gérard Depardieu, had a score of incidental music by Stephen Sondheim? Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm feeling a little hoarse.
I'm gonna get drunk and I might start a fight. I'm is tonight, but just one night. I'll be a girl who goes where she damn well goes, taking a midnight ride in her father's clothes. My horse may be saddled, but she's running free, and she only truly gets to feel the rushing of the wind when she's with me. I'm gonna cut and run, for too long I've been a loaded gun, itching to fire on the shackles that keep me here. Well, no more, enough, I'm done. I'm gonna cut and run, I don't know a thing to anyone. I'm gonna cut off the anchor that weighs me down in a flash. I'll cut and run, cut and run. They were to keep me small, they were to keep me all polite. They were to keep me mild, keeping the bastard child out of sight. My father calls himself an honest man, a respectable man, but they're both twisted up inside. They dress their cruelty up in fancy clothes and politesse, but it is cruelty nonetheless. They keep their greed and selfishness disguised. They're keeping me weak and sick with this mock gentility, making me wear this mask of respectability. Well, I ain't gonna take it. I'm gonna be free to wear my rage and my pain and my cruelty and my joy for all to see. And this lad that I'm meeting is a pirate. He's the most exciting lad I've ever seen. Though he says right now he's between ships, he's no less of a pirate to me. And he's my guarantee, I will never be like them. I will be free, free. Ha! I'm gonna cut and run, live in liberty, I'm about to run. No longer trapped as a daughter in name alone, no more false facades undone. I'm gonna cut and run, gonna make a husband of that John. But until then, I will just have to be the stain on my father and stepmother's upright name. So I'll drink, screw and fight till they're rid with shame, and then I'm gonna cut and run.
That was the wonderful song Cut and Run from the Ballad of Anne and Mary, that musical drama podcast by Lawrence Owen and Lindsay Sharman. And the question was, what 1974 French film featured incidental music by Stephen Sondheim? The answer is Stavisky. It's reported that Alain Resnais, who was the director, was an enormous fan of Stephen Sondheim, having seen Follies on Broadway. That would be the original version. So when Sondheim was in Cannes for the showing of his mystery film, The Last of Sheila, he was surprised to get a call from Alain Resnais asking him to score the film Stavisky, and pleasingly Stephen Sondheim agreed. Interestingly, on the film set, Resnais would sometimes play the cast album of A Little Night Music to set the mood for the actors. On to the next question, or as my geography master used to say many years ago, number next one. The Last of Sheila, and we've just mentioned that, was a murder mystery feature film premiering in the year before Stavisky, that's 1973, and it had a stellar cast including James Mason, Raquel Welch, Ian McShane and James Coburn, to name but four. But which actor did Sondheim write the screenplay for the film with? And I'll give you a clue, it's someone I've already mentioned today in this programme. Well, we heard a couple of songs already from I Wish My Life Were Like a Musical, so it only seems fair that we hear the title song, and this is it.
I dreamed a dream, like every young girl has, that I was certain would come true one day, of stardom and success and all that jazz, so I could pay the bills I'd have to pay. But that isn't quite the way things are. No auditions yet worked out for me. I still long to be a superstar and dream of how I'd love my life to be. I wish that my life were like a musical that I could go waltzing through in style. With each song and dance I'd be less miserable. With each sound of music I'd smile. The good would make good, the bad would get their due, and steam trains would race and pussies wouldn't poo, and foreigners always would speak English too. For once I'd not fear the routine. My life would be fit for a queen. I could cast spells, tyrants would adore me, ghosts would write operas for me. I'd get through songs not fearing ever hearing some stagey swine shout next in my verse line. I wish that my life were like a West End hit, where others had thoughts the same as mine, and all that I said need not make sense one bit, as long as it just about rhymed. The guys would show feelings that they used to hide. I'd still want to sing with corpses by my side, while I'd even sing if I myself had died. I'd live without scruples or shame, and say that the writer's to blame. But then, if my life were like a musical, I might be orphaned, treated mean, or trampled on by wilder beasts, or sold to be a slave, or green. I might be killed by my own twin, or made into a pie mid-show, or fed to plants, or crucified, or made to sing with Russell Crowe. I might, I know, but even so, I wish that my life were like a musical, where I felt at home in every key. I'd not have to trek to any place at all. Projections would just come to me. I'd get sentimental without cause to fear that boyfriends will puke at every word they hear. My voice will be pleasing to a phantom's ear. I wish that my life were this way. But then if my life were like a musical, I know there would be a whole show about me with a part I'd be perfect to
There we are, the title song from Alexander Bermange's I Wish My Life Were Like a Musical. That's a great show, and if you do get a chance to see it, or perhaps to buy the music, please do so. But the question before you heard that song was, what actor did Stephen Sondheim write the screenplay for the film The Last of Sheila with, and who I've already mentioned in the programme? And the answer is Psycho himself, Anthony Perkins. Apparently the shooting of the film was very far from easy. According to one of the actresses, Diane Cannon, the first cameraman was fired and the yacht it was filmed on sank. Now, I think this is interesting. The idea for the film came when the director, Herbert Ross, went to a murder mystery party, one of a number of which was created by Perkins and Sondheim together in the 1960s and 70s. Which leads us on to the next question. And this is a piece of real trivia. Perkins and Sondheim were great fans of murder mystery puzzles, I think that's evident, and worked together on 2 more projects, one for film and one for television. But can you name them? And to give you a few minutes thinking time, let's hear another song from Michael Gordon Shapiro's Gideon and the Blundersnorp. This is Royalty.
The kingdom is comprised of over 19 million subjects, from the merchant to the fletcher, to the peasant to the clerk. All of them united by a deeply held conviction that they play a vital role within the fabric of our nation. Each of them a helper, each of them a pillar, each of them a stanza in a rich and endless song. There's only one hitch. They're wrong! No one matters unless they are royalty. Royals govern the land and the sea. They're loved and admired, no voting required. For true inner worth is a matter of birth, and the world puts us where we should be. See the farmer at work with his crops. We trust him with pigs and we trust him with slops. But that is the point where his expertise stops. We don't quiz him on music or law. See the baker with oven and plate. His bread-making skills we can hardly debate. But we keep him well clear of matters of state. Can you see him in charge of a wedding or war? All society hinges on royalty, gladly heeding their every decree. But don't mean a thing if you ain't got that king in your family line. In fact, it's a sign that the world puts us where we should be. See the queen, so lovely and regal, she tells us what's legal. Oh, queen, your enemies flee you. How lovely to be you, how noticed, how valued, how seen. Here's a noble girl, clever and bored. She's brought to events where she's largely ignored. She wears what they give her, she does what they say. She has some ideals, but she's told that they get in the way. But she will inherit the queendom one day. Then I'll matter because I'll be royalty. I'll be valued and I will be free. I'll speak imperiously, be taken seriously. So we wait for that fortunate date when we're ushered by fate to our proper estate. It'll be rather great when the world puts us where we should be. Oh, I should not have told you all that.
There we are, the wonderful song Royalty from Gideon and the Blundersnorp by Michael Gordon Shapiro. And the question was, can you name the two mystery stories written by Stephen Sondheim and Anthony Perkins? Well, I'll be very impressed if you get this, but the answer is The Chorus Girl Murder Case, which was written between 1975 and 1979 and slated to star Tommy Tune, and the other was Crime and Variations, a 7-part television series written in the 1980s. Now, the first piece, The Chorus Girl Murder Case, was apparently set backstage during preparations for a musical in the 1940s. It does seem that Stephen Sondheim was proposing to write some songs for The Chorus Girl Murder Case, because each of the songs was going to contain a clue. It's a great shame that that doesn't seem to have happened. With luck, it might be one of the many projects which I hope will be unpacked from the proverbial trunk, now that the late great Stephen Sondheim is no longer with us. Now, let's go back to incidental music, because it's one of those things that people just don't associate Stephen Sondheim with in terms of composition. But he did more than you think. So, what 1960 play by Arthur Lawrence, and also featuring a young Jane Fonda, did Stephen Sondheim write incidental music for? And we'll listen to a song called Love Wolf, sung by the fictional pop star Lydia from the Mockery Manor Musical Drama Podcast. There we are, Love Wolf, sung by Lydia, one of the characters in Mockery Manor, the musical drama podcast by Lawrence Owen and Lindsay Sharman. And to answer the question beforehand, Stephen Sondheim wrote the incidental music for Arthur Lawrence's 1960 play Invitation to a March. And what's more, he orchestrated his own music for 4 instruments. Once again, we don't really associate Stephen Sondheim with orchestration. The sainted Jonathan Tunick is often the name we think of for that. And so, on to our last question. And it's a variant of a question which I suspect is on the mind of every fan of Stephen Sondheim at this moment. Are there any more new Sondheim musicals to come? Well, of course, I can't answer that. But in September of 2021, Stephen Sondheim confirmed that he was writing a new musical and that he hoped to get it produced on Broadway next season, which is to say 2022, this year. And it's already been reported that Bernadette Peters and Nathan Lane, both Sondheim stalwarts, have stated publicly that they have been to a read-through of it. This show is written by playwright David Ives, but what is it called? And to give you time to think about this last question, let's listen to the finale song from the beautiful cantata or song cycle Dreams of Peace and Freedom by the peerless Sue Casson.
On his return from Nuremberg, Maxwell Fyfe pursued these themes of natural law, natural justice and human rights in papers and speeches.
There is in each of us a sundial factor of our mentality. We are inclined only to count the sunny hours. Moreover, after exhausting wars, men tend to suffer a weariness of mind. This lassitude can make them shrink away from facing the limitations of human nature. It can produce a facile skepticism about their evil deeds. New generations dislike reading the history of the gas chambers, and so the fact that men claiming to be civilized put millions to death in the gas chambers slips from history. Most people approach the subject of war crimes trials fundamentally either as a cynic or an idealist. This is, I think, because in essence the case for or against trying war criminals depends on that controversial subject which has become succinctly known as human rights. Your cynic says, human rights? There are none. Your idealist, however, takes the view that there are certain rights and freedoms, not created by lawyers, but to which mankind as such is heir, and which cannot be alienated. It is a conception akin to the idea of the law of nature, which has had such a wide influence on relationships in past centuries, although now somewhat outmoded. The idea of fundamental human rights is one in which I firmly believe.
We have found safety with all things undying, the winds and morning, tears of men and mirth, the deep night, birds singing and clouds flying, and sleep and freedom and the autumnal earth. We have found safety. We have found safety. That's not for time's safety, that's not for time's throwing. We have found safety, blessed security. Who is so safe as we?
If our unfortunate generation has proved one thing, it is demonstrated that the barbarian is not behind us, but always underneath us, ready to rise up.
Deep night, morning, sleep and freedom. Deep night, morning, sleep and freedom. Deep night, morning, and sleep and freedom. Deep night.
We have found safety, sleep and freedom. We have found safety and freedom in the autumn. Deep night, morning, sleep and freedom. We have found safety with all things undying. The winds and morning, tears of men and mirth. The deep night, birds singing and clouds flying. And sleep and freedom and the autumn. We have found safety. We have found safety. That's not for we have time safety. It's not for time's throwing. We have found safety. Less security. Who is so safe as we? Who is so safe as we?
There we are, the finale from Dreams of Peace and Freedom by Sue Casson. That's a wonderful piece of work, and if you get a chance to hear that or see it performed, you should take that up. That's an excellent show. And to answer the last question in this year's Merry Quizmas and a Happy New Year Earful Musical Talk quiz for 2022, the new Sondheim musical is called Square One, which of course is usually at the beginning, and therefore literally where we came in. And so we've gone, ironically, full circle, a square and a circle in one small discussion. I must be the square. And that, I think, is probably that for this quiz. On behalf of everyone from Musical Talk, may I wish you a happy new year, and I hope that 2022 turns out to be fantastic for everybody. And one way in which I hope it continues to be fantastic is by your continued enjoyment, I hope, of Musical Talk episodes. We shall be here for the rest of the year, so please do join us if and when you can. And with those words, I shall close this episode, and to mark the idea of Stephen Sondheim going back to square one, his new musical, let's go back to our own square one and finish today with the piece of music that you heard at the very opening of this show, the Telltale Heart instrumental from Tom Arnold's The House of Edgar. Happy New Year! This episode of Musical Talk, edited and presented by Thos Ribbits. Copyright Musical Talk 2022, except for the songs where the copyright remains with the creators in each case. And my enormous thanks to each and every one of them for allowing me to play their wonderful songs in this episode of Musical Talk. To find out more about the world of Musical Talk and listen to past episodes, go along to our website www.musicaltalk.co.uk or subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at MusicalTalkThos.